Millionaire CEO Graham. Westwood took his twins on a blind date, pretending to be broke. And honestly, if anyone had told him that decision would flip his entire world upside down, he would have laughed and called it dramatic. But here he was, standing in the middle of a cheap family-style restaurant with flickering fairy lights, trying to balance two booster seats, a diaper bag, and the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from late night board meetings, but from twin 5-year-olds who operated like a team of tiny chaos engines. He'd traded his polished suit for faded jeans, a wrinkled hoodie, and a beat-up baseball cap that made him look like he spent weekends fixing lawnmowers, instead of signing multi-million-dollar contracts. And the wildest part? He felt relieved. No one staring. No one whispering. No one pretending to laugh at jokes just because he had money. It was the closest he'd felt to normal in years. The hostess gave him a weird look as Emma tried climbing onto the table, and Ella chewed on a crayon like it was a snack, but Graham just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I know. We're kind of a disaster." Tonight, the date he was supposed to meet had already bailed, sent him a blunt message about how she couldn't waste time on a broke dad of 2. So he sat there, trying not to feel stupid, pretending he wasn't stung by the reminder that most people cared more about his bank account than anything real. He was about to pack up the twins and head home when the door opened and a woman stepped inside, brushing wind-blown hair from her face, holding a canvas tote bag like she'd sprinted across town. She scanned the room, checked her phone, checked the table number, squinted at him, then walked over with a small, nervous smile. "Hi, I'm Lena," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sorry if I look frazzled. The bus was late. And then I tripped over a curb. And honestly, I'm just glad I made it without spilling coffee on myself. Are you Daniel?" Graham blinked because Daniel was absolutely not his name, but her gaze drifted to the twins and she laughed softly. The app said window table with kids. "So I'm guessing it's you?" In that moment, something tightened inside his chest. Not fear, not guilt, just a strange sense of breathing room. She wasn't judging the mess, the noise, the energy spilling out of his daughters. She wasn't analyzing his clothes. She wasn't calculating anything. So he swallowed the truth, nodded once, and said, "Yeah, we just sat down." What happened next threw him completely. Instead of wincing at the spilled juice, instead of dodging responsibility like so many dates before her, Lena reached for a stack of napkins, wiped up the mess, and started chatting with the twins like she was interviewing them for a cartoon sidekick position. Emma showed her a drawing of a purple dragon with chicken legs, and Lena gasped like it belonged in a museum. Ella offered her a soggy French fry, and Lena accepted it with Oscar-worthy enthusiasm. And just like that, the table shifted. The stress faded. The noise didn't feel suffocating. The twins weren't burdens. They were part of the moment. Graham watched quietly, almost confused by how easy it was for her to be human with them. No questions about his job. No curiosity about what model car he drove. No subtle hints about wealth or lifestyle. She asked things like, "What's your favorite bedtime story?" And "Do you guys think pancakes should count as dinner?" And the girls giggled like she'd sprinkled them with magic. For the first time in longer than he cared to admit, Graham felt seen, not as Westwood the CEO, but as a father doing his absolute best not to fall apart. Then the server dropped off the check early, as if sensing a rush, and Graham's stomach twisted, because he'd worn jeans that didn't have his wallet. Before he could panic, Lena noticed the hesitation, reached calmly into her bag, and handed her card to the server without even blinking. "Don't worry about it," she said softly. "I've had way worse dates." He stared at her, stunned. Not because he couldn't pay. He could have. Bought the whole restaurant twice. Over. But because she didn't flinch, didn't judge, didn't make it weird, she just helped, out of kindness, out of instinct, out of something honest and grounded. And in that soft moment, something shifted inside him, something he couldn't name but felt deep and real. As the night ended and she waved goodbye, the twins hugging her legs like they'd known her forever, Graham stood there in the glow of the parking lot thinking one thing. This woman didn't just walk into the wrong date. She walked straight into a part of his life money had never been able to fix. And he had no idea that by tomorrow morning, everything he thought he knew about her, about his company, and about the truth behind her past would blow his entire world wide open. Graham didn't plan on seeing Lena again. He told himself it was just one strange, oddly peaceful night, and that was it. But the twins had other ideas. By Sunday morning, they were standing at his bedside holding drawings they'd made of Lena, stick figures, curly hair, little hearts, basically a "Please find this woman again" poster set. And honestly, he didn't fight it. Something about her had stuck with him too, her calm, her realness, the way she made a cheap diner feel like the safest place in the world for two kids who usually got overwhelmed by everything. So, he drove them across town to the community center she mentioned, the one she said she volunteered at on weekends. He expected a quiet place, maybe a few kids. What he didn't expect was a line of laid-off workers snaking out the door, holding folders, resume, and hope so thin it looked ready to snap. Inside, Lena sat behind a folding table with a laptop older than his car. Her hair was tied up messily, her sleeves rolled up, and she was helping a man rewrite his resume like she'd been doing it for years. When she looked up and saw the twins, sprinting toward her, screaming, "Lena!" her whole face lit up. She stood, hugged them like they were hers, then looked at Graham with a warm smile that made something in his chest loosen. "Hey, didn't expect to see you again," she said, brushing a curl behind Emma's ear. He shrugged lightly. "We were in the area." Big lie. Massive lie. But she didn't call him out. Instead, she let the girls sit beside her while she worked. And Graham watched. Really watched. Watched her talk to people with the kind of compassion that can't be taught. Watched her help an older man fix his job history with patience and zero judgment. Watched her laugh with a young mom who'd been rejected from 6 interviews in a row. She treated everyone like they mattered, like they weren't invisible, like the world hadn't chewed them up. And for the first time, he felt a strange wave of guilt because he recognized half the resumes on that table had once belonged to employees from his company, Westwood Dynamics, the company he'd been trying to repair from the inside out. He had no idea they'd ended up here. No idea Lena was the one catching them when they fell. Then she mentioned it casually, like it meant nothing. "I used to work at Westwood Dynamics, actually. Before the layoffs." Graham froze. She didn't notice. She just kept typing, her voice calm, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Best team I ever had. But when the department got cut, nobody bothered to listen to the people actually doing the work. Just suits making decisions from the top." He swallowed hard. The words hit like a punch because he was the top. She kept going, completely unaware of the storm inside him. Honestly, the CEO seemed clueless. He let the wrong people run the place, and good people paid the price. His throat tightened. She wasn't being rude. She was being brutally honest. And somehow hearing that truth from someone who had absolutely no idea she was talking to the CEO himself hurt more than any quarterly report ever had. The kicker was when she said, "If someone fixed that culture, the company could be incredible." Then she turned to help another man, speaking with a passion that made Graham's stomach twist. She didn't know it, but she was describing everything he wanted the company to become. Honest leadership, real communication, a place people didn't fear walking into. But no one at corporate ever dared to speak this openly. And yet here she was, offering the clearest diagnosis of his company's problems he'd ever heard, like she was just chatting about the weather. The twins climbed into his lap as he sat in the back, pretending he was fine, pretending he wasn't being emotionally drop-kicked by a woman who thought he made just enough money to afford a bus pass. "Daddy," Emma whispered. "Miss Lena fixes people," and that one small sentence hit him harder than the truth. She'd spoken minutes earlier. Lena didn't just fix resumes. She fixed morale, confidence, broken spirits. She fixed things he'd never even tried to understand. When the community center closed for the day, she packed her old laptop and slung her tote bag over her shoulder. "You guys want to walk with me?" she asked gently. The twins scrambled to her side instantly. Graham followed, more quiet than usual, his head spinning with 100 truths he wasn't ready to admit. As they walked toward the bus stop, Lena pointed to the cracked pavement. "This spot right here? I tripped on it yesterday. Embarrassing." The twins giggled, and Graham forced a smile. She kept talking, unaware of the emotional hurricane she'd created inside him. "You know, I used to pitch ideas at Westwood," she said lightly. "Employee-first programs, communication loops, transparency dashboards, the usual stuff. But upper management shut it all down." Then she said the line that changed everything for him. "Sometimes I wonder if the CEO even knows what's happening in his own building." Graham's breath caught. She continued, swinging her tote bag softly. "If someone actually listened to workers, really listened, Westwood could be the kind of company people were proud to work for." Proud, he hadn't heard that word associated with his company in years. Then the bus pulled up. She helped the twins climb the steps, kissed their cheeks, and waved at him through the window like everything inside him wasn't unraveling. And as the bus pulled away, Graham stood there on the sidewalk with the wind chilling his face, knowing one brutal truth. The woman he'd lied to, the woman he'd connected with, the woman his daughters already adored, was the same woman who unknowingly held the blueprint to save the company he was failing to fix. And tomorrow, when she learned who he really was, nothing, absolutely nothing would ever be the same. Graham barely slept that night. He kept replaying Lena's words, hearing them like they were echoing against the walls of his mind. Sharp, accurate, and painfully true. It was one thing to hear criticism from investors or board members who treated people like numbers, but hearing it from someone who had lived through the fallout, someone who had been pushed out of a job she clearly loved, that hit different. And knowing she had absolutely no clue he was the CEO, responsible for all that chaos, made it feel 10 times heavier. The next morning, he woke up with one goal pounding through his head. Fix the damn company before she finds out who I am. So he marched into the HQ, building dressed in the same wrinkled hoodie he'd worn the night of the date, ignoring the confused looks from his staff as he stomped through the lobby like a storm cloud on caffeine. Normally, the elevator ride to the top floor was silent and intimidating. Today, he felt like it was taking too long. Like every second wasted was another second the company was bleeding talent. When he stepped into the executive conference room, half the board froze mid-sentence. One guy even dropped his pen. Graham didn't care. He sat at the head of the table, leaned forward, and said, "We're done doing things the old way." Then he tore into every broken system Lena had described. He called out the layoffs that were done without real evaluation. He called out the useless middle managers who made decisions based on spreadsheets instead of human beings. He demanded a complete audit of internal departments, insisted on transparency systems, and ordered town halls with employees, real conversations, not the fake everything's fine nonsense his board liked to push. The room went silent. One executive cleared his throat like he wanted to protest. Graham cut him off with a glare so sharp. The guy sank back down like a deflated balloon. "We fix this," Graham said, "or we lose the people who built this place. And we sure as hell don't lose them again." As he spoke those words, the image of Lena at the community center flashed in his mind. Her tired eyes, her steady hands, her quiet spirit making room for people who'd been shoved aside. She wasn't loud, she wasn't demanding, she wasn't chasing power. But she understood leadership better than anyone in that room. She understood compassion, humanity, accountability. 3 things his company had been starving for. And for the first time in months, he saw a flicker of hope, a direction, a blueprint, her blueprint. But the world had a way of ruining good timing. And the very thing he feared most was already on its way to her doorstep. The breaking point hit that afternoon. Lena had just sat down at a bus stop, balancing her tote bag on her lap, when her phone buzzed with a notification she didn't expect, an email from a former coworker titled, "OMG, look at this." She tapped it open, thinking it was some meme or layoff joke, but no, it was a link. A news link, and right there at the top of the page, staring back at her with a confident smile and a suit worth more than her entire apartment building, was Graham. CEO of Westwood Dynamics releases new restructuring plan. The word slammed into her chest like a gut punch. She blinked once, twice. Her breath caught in her throat as the truth burned its way through every memory she had of him. The jokes, The quiet moments, the diner, the twins, the way he watched her help people like it meant something. He had lied. About everything. She felt heat rising in her chest, confusion twisting through her like barbed wire. How long had he known? Did he laugh later? Did he sit somewhere? In that giant office of his thinking, she was just some clueless ex-employee. And the worst part, the part that stung so deep it made her eyes blur, was that she had trusted him. Trusted the softness in his voice. Trusted the tired honesty she thought she saw in him. The bus arrived, people shuffled in around her, but Lena didn't move. She sat frozen, her phone shaking in her hands, her mind spiraling through every piece of the puzzle she'd been too blind to see. Just then, a familiar black SUV rolled up to the curb. The door opened. Graham stepped out, his hoodie replaced with a suit, but his expression wrecked with worry. "Lena," he said softly, "I need to explain." She stood, her legs unsteady, anger simmering beneath her ribs. "Explain what?" she snapped. "That you lied to me? Lied to your daughters? Lied about everything." He reached for her arm, but she pulled back like his touch burned. "Lena, please, don't," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't act like this is something small." Passengers on the bus watched with wide eyes. Strangers on the sidewalk slowed down. But she didn't care. "You let me talk about losing my job. You let me tell you how hurt I was. And you sat there, pretending you didn't know you were the one who let it happen." His voice cracked. "I wasn't pretending not to care. You were pretending to be someone else." She cut in, her chest tightening. "And I don't even know who the hell you really are." The bus doors hissed shut behind her. She stepped backward toward the bus, her heart shattering in slow motion. "I don't want to hear another word." "Graham!" The doors closed between them, and the bus pulled away as he stood on the sidewalk, watching her disappear behind glass. And in that moment, with the city moving around him like nothing had happened, Graham realized the truth he had been too afraid to accept. He might be able to fix a broken company, but he was dangerously close to losing the one person who could have helped him fix himself. For 3 days, Graham lived in a silence that felt louder than any boardroom argument he'd ever been dragged into. The twins asked about Lena non-stop, drawing her little hearts, taping their pictures on the fridge, even pretending to call her on their toy phones. And every time they did, he felt another crack split inside him. He'd fixed failing departments, reorganized broken systems, replaced toxic managers. But the one thing he actually cared about, the one thing that mattered beyond profit margins and shareholders, was gone. And the worst part? He knew he deserved it. So when his assistant told him the employee town hall he'd scheduled was happening Thursday, he didn't think he could handle the idea of stepping into a room full of people who absolutely believed they knew who he was. But he went. Not in a suit. Not in the polished mask he'd worn for years. He went as the man Lena saw through, without even trying. The man who'd sat in a diner with spaghetti, stains on his hoodie, and 2 kids who couldn't sit still for 10 seconds. When he walked into the auditorium, every seat was filled. Employees he hadn't seen in months. Workers from departments he barely knew. People who'd survived layoffs. New hires trying to find their place. Managers who looked nervous as hell, all staring at him like he was about to deliver another empty speech. He took the mic. No notes, no slides, no rehearsed lines. "I lied," he said. The room fell silent. "You could have heard a pen drop. Not to you, but to someone who deserved better. And because of that lie, I finally saw this place, really saw it, for the first time in years. I saw the fear, the frustration, the way people feel unseen." He swallowed, gripping the podium like it was the only thing holding him upright. "I met someone who used to work here. Someone who told me exactly how this company failed her. Failed a lot of you. And she didn't know she was talking to the CEO when she said it." Every face in the crowd shifted. A few whispers. A few stunned looks. "Her honesty," he continued, "is the reason everything is changing now, but I never told her who I was. I didn't think I deserved to." He paused, breath unsteady. "But today, I need to make sure she knows she mattered. That you all matter." The lights dimmed as he stepped off the stage. But before he reached the exit, a familiar voice called softly from the back of the room, quiet, hesitant, but unmistakably her. Graham, why are you telling them that? He turned. Lena stood just inside the doors, clutching her tote bag. Looking like she'd walked into the last place she intended to be, his heart nearly dropped through the floor. She didn't move at first, and neither did he. The whole auditorium turned toward her like the universe itself was holding its breath. Graham took a slow step toward her, then another, until the room felt like a tunnel with only one person at the end of it. You weren't supposed to hear it like that, he said quietly. But you deserved the truth. All of it. Lena blinked hard, her voice thin. You lied to me, Graham. You let me tell you everything I lost because of your decisions, and you just sat there. I wasn't sitting there as a CEO, he said, his words trembling. I was sitting there as a dad who didn't know how to be honest about who he was, without ruining the one good thing he'd stumbled into. She glanced down, her fingers gripping her tote strap. Your daughters. They're the only reason I'm even standing here. They taped drawings to my door. He let out a shaky breath. I know, they asked if they could bring them to you again. Something fragile flickered. Across her face, hurt, tenderness, confusion all tangled together. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Because the second I told you the truth, I was afraid I'd lose you. A long silence stretched between them, heavy and painfully honest. Employees looked away, giving them privacy even though hundreds of eyes still filled the room. Finally, Lena lifted her gaze, tears swelling but held back with sheer force. You want honesty? She asked. Graham nodded. Always. I didn't care that you were broke, she said softly. I don't care that you're wealthy. I cared that you were kind, that you listened, that you loved those girls more than anything in the world. But when you lied, it felt like everything real between us disappeared. He swallowed the lump in his throat. I'm trying to earn it back. Not with money, not with titles, just with the truth. Before she could respond, the doors burst open and the twins came running in. Emma holding a crumpled drawing, Ella carrying a tiny plastic tiara. They ran straight to Lena, wrapping their arms around her legs with the kind of pure, unconditional trust only kids could give. Lena knelt down, her face cracking open through the hurt as she hugged them back, her forehead pressed to their curls. We missed you, Emma whispered. Don't leave again, Ella added. Lena broke, silently, fully, beautifully, and when she stood again, she met Graham's eyes with something gentler than before. If we do this, she whispered, no more lies. Graham nodded, voice thick. No more lies. The auditorium erupted into applause, soft at first, then louder because for the first time in years, people were watching their CEO be exactly what they needed, human. Lena reached for his hand, hesitant but real. He took it. And as the room blurred behind them, she spoke the words that sealed their future, not as a couple defined by wealth or titles, but as two people rebuilding something honest from the ground up. Then let's fix this place, she said, squeezing his hand. Together. And just like that, the woman he met by accident became the woman who saved his company, his daughters' hearts, and the part of him he never thought he'd find again.